So you've been training for several months now. You've been learning techniques, you've been drilling them, and hopefully you learn good technique, good breathing, and have incrementally been adding power to your strikes until you can now strike full powered with good technique. And that is the segue into the next roadmap section: tactics and how to fight. And this is the topic of episode 20 of the Adroit Dojo podcast. And I am your host, Olga. First, I'll be listing the various tactics commonly used in fights. Then I will be listing some additional concepts and mindsets. Then finally, I will give some different tools you can use to help improve your ability to fight and learn. To start off with, we have countering, which is one of the most common ones you'll see. I'm not going to break down how to counter, but it's being able to read your opponent and learn their timing, and then using broken rhythm to break their timing and get your own hit in either before or during their own strike. And some people will actually do it afterwards. So they'll have the opponent throw a strike, and they'll move or block it out of the way, and then immediately follow up with a strike before their opponent can react. Haragei, the karate cut, is a really good example of fast countering. As soon as their opponent starts to throw a strike, he's already coming in. He'd be a really awful opponent to fight. Next up is high-low or high-low or low-high. This one is where you strike low or high to get them to focus their guard there and their attention there, and then you go to the opposite height for a better hit. It can also be used defensively, so you throw a really powerful blow, let's say high, and then you need a moment to recover, get back in a proper stance, and be able to guard. So maybe you throw a low punch or a low kick as you transition into a proper defensive position. Next up, we have fake opening / trap / baiting / drawing. And this is very common with the counter punchers. This is where you purposely leave a spot open for attack so that you know they're going to go there. That way you can set up the trap to counterpunch them or trap their arm or, any number of things. Basically, it's just you want them to strike there, they strike there, and then you spring the trap and do whatever you want it to do. Next up is circling to the weak side. This is a person that has a strong side, a weak side. The strong side is where they can throw the power punches and power kicks such as roundhouse, rear hook, rear uppercut, the cross, and so on. So the weak side would be the side where you do the lead, hook, jab, and so on. So generally speaking, you want to circle to the weak side so you're not getting hit with their strong punches and kicks. It's also way harder for them to defend themselves because they only have the one arm to slightly defend themselves. Next up is controlling the pace. This is one of those that's also a strategy. So you can do things to control the pace like speed up your attacks, slow down your attacks, break off the attack, clinch, and it's used to break an opponent out of their rhythm if their offense is beating your defense, or if you just need a quick breather, or if you just need some time to figure out a new tactic or strategy. So controlling the pace is something both fighters will usually do throughout the entire fight. Next up is pressure or overwhelming tactic. This is what a lot of inexperienced fighters like to do. It's done well. It's something champions use, like Mike Tyson. Pressure fighting is a favorite for infighters. The concept of coming out swinging. So you immediately come out and apply high level aggression to your opponent and hope to overwhelm them with your offense. The major downside to this is it leaves you really gassed very quickly. Next up is broken rhythm / beat punch. So this is where a person purposely changes up their cadence or rhythm in striking. This is because as we train and spar, we have a natural pace and speed in which we throw strikes, how fast we move around, and how fast our strikes come back to the guard position. Learning broken rhythm helps break that up by either purposely slowing down or speeding up your techniques. And this is a good way to mess with counterfighters, because counterfighters get their big thing is being able to read what you telegraph, get used to your timing, and then use that against you. So by changing your rhythm, you throw off their ability to counter. And then finally, taking the fight to where they're weak. This is a clear extension of circling to their weak side, but much more. This can mean going to the clinching. This could be going to the ground, being an outfighter, and running away as they try to close the distance. Keeping a medium distance when they've been training to chase an outsider, or maybe they've been learning to try to keep a longer range. It could also be they have a poor guard on their left or right side, or maybe they're susceptible to leg kicks. Just whatever it is, you're taking the fight to where they are susceptible. On that list, the most common tactics you'll see in striking arts. Next up are some mental concepts. To start off with, we have Mushin, or no mind. It's clearing out unnecessary thoughts and distractions while you're training or fighting. Another one is Kime, meaning to decide. And what this means is knowing when to tense your body, such as when you're defending a strike or when you're striking your opponent. Because you want to be loose, fluid, right up until impact. So it's that focus moment that is Kime. Next one is breath power. And this is one that should have been taught to you pretty early on. But if not, the reason why in boxing do the exhales is because it helps produce power, and it helps you breathe properly so that you remember to breathe. Some people who are untrained for some reason want to hold their breath or start breathing too quickly. So not only does that exhale during impact help create more energy and focus, but it also helps regulate breathing. And in Japanese arts, it's called Kiai. Next is Haragei. Haragei. And that means stomach art. And my interpretation is a little bit different than the standard one. So if you want to go standard, cool. I just have my own take on it. And so not only is it to be able to anticipate an opponent's movements and threats and whatnot, which is all mental, but I think it's more about centering yourself and using meditation in the moment to refocus and to re-enter Mushin, and to get rid of, all the unnecessary thoughts and worries, like if you were doing bad in the fight or whatnot. So it's to center self, and you do that through deep belly breaths. And a good way to train this is yoga, but I think also some of the meditative interactive arts such as Aikido and Tai Chi would be useful in this regard, at least. Now, I'm not advocating that you learn their techniques for martial arts, not at all, just for helping you center yourself. Alright, next is the warrior spirit, the indomitable spirit, or in Japanese, Kokoro. And so what this means is having tenacity, that will to never give up, getting up one more time than you get knocked down, and so on. It's that whole inspiration part of every movie fight where the fighter really digs deep and gets back up again. And I think right before then is a good example of the self-centering too. Because they dig deep, start believing in themselves again, refocus, and get up with that indomitable spirit. The best way to practice this is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you gotta go through intense training, doing lots of drills, becoming well-rounded. So you need to be able to deal with kicks, punches, clinching, throws, ground game. So the more comfortable and capable you are, the more confident you are, and the better you train at this, the more skillful you'll become, which increases confidence. And the more trials and tribulations you've pushed through to get to that point also helps that indomitable spirit. So I think this is something a lot of people lack, and it's because when the going gets tough, a lot of people start giving up. So to build up that indomitable spirit, you got to keep pushing through and get past. And finally is the concept of Zanshin. Zanshin. I believe it translates to transcendent awareness. I interpret it as entering the zone. So it's when you really enter that perfect state of no mind, and you're very self-centered, you have great situational awareness. It seems like all your reaction speed increases, you think faster, you move faster. So I think that is a really good explanation for Zanshin. And there's no cut and dry method for entering it. I've never heard of anyone voluntarily entering it. It's just something that happens. However, I think the 4 methods I've listed earlier help pave the way to being able to enter it, along with really sound fundamental techniques and situational awareness on top of that. Alright, so those are the mental concepts. And finally, I'm going to go over some of the tools so you can learn, understand, and help be taught to be a better fighter. I think the first and most important one is to get out there and start sparring with different styles. So my own history is, unfortunately, I did Taekwondo, and when I started sparring other styles, the first thing I realized is I have to ditch almost everything I was taught in Taekwondo. Because mine was actually the complete opposite of sport Taekwondo, where they're very light on their feet and they do foot fencing. Mine was more slow, traditional, and very solid where you don't move. It's very stiff block, stiff kick, things like that. And so I realized I'm just trash at fighting. So I had to learn to get light on my feet, to dodge. That was another thing. Like, we never were taught dodging or head movement or anything like that. So I had to relearn martial arts from the ground up. And that's all because I was exposed to different styles. So you can learn new techniques, new methodology, little tips and tricks from the various martial arts. It is a great tool, and it is one of the most underutilized ones. And finally, watch professional and amateur fights and really try to analyze them, and use YouTubers who also break down and analyze fights, like Kenshin Lawrence. And I want to say the modern martial artist. Those two channels are great. Help break it down. You will learn a lot from them. And when you understand tactics, the strategy, and fighter archetypes, you can better understand why a certain person uses certain tactics and why they fight a certain way, and you start understanding their setups and executions. So that's all I had, and to recap, it's about learning tactics at this point. It's about learning and applying the mental concepts I mentioned, seeking out other martial artists from other styles, learn from them, train with them, fight with them, and finally, just try to absorb as many fight videos as you can. And that will definitely lay great groundwork on top of your fundamentals to really teach you how to be a good fighter. So this has been Juan with the Adroit Dojo podcast.